Thanks, Dave, and good morning, everyone. Good morning to all of you online. So I very much would like to provide you with a little bit of a level set for the presentation on our university's experience with engaging with the community around us. For those of you who were at the spring Internet 2 meetings, you'll perhaps recall Aneesh Chopra sharing with us an extraordinary presentation in which he mentioned some of the engagement that he saw happening in Cleveland at Case Western Reserve University in the Case Connection Zone. And I'm here today in some ways to give you a little bit of an update on Aneesh's sharing from the spring. And I thought it best to begin with a kind of level set about why Cleveland. And so I went to the Chamber of Commerce and said, I need to do a kind of 30-second ditty on Cleveland, and would you send me the best of what we have to show and share? And they sent it to me, and I watched it and decided this wasn't really the kind of video I wanted to show. I decided to share this one, and let me see what you think. Whoops. Guys, one more time. Guys in the back, you want to hit the play button. No, not that button. The play button.
Fun times in Cleveland again. Still Cleveland. Come on down to Cleveland town, everyone. Under construction since 1868. See our river that catches on fire. It's so polluted that all our fish have AIDS. We see the sun almost 3 times a year. This guy has at least 2 DUIs. The flats look like a Scooby-Doo ghost town. Don't slow down in East Cleveland or you'll die. Our economy's based on LeBron James. Buy a house for the price of a VCR. Our main export is crippling depression. We're so retarded that we think this is art. It could be worse though, at least we're not Detroit.
So Cleveland, like a lot of cities around the country, indeed around the world, is a story of at least 2 cities. The reality is that all around the world we have cities like Cleveland, stories where there is beautiful skyline combined with the reality that 1 out of every 3 women in the city of Cleveland has type 2 diabetes. Realities that we have amazing facilities with great museums, and at the same time, fewer than 40% of the kids entering high school finish high school in Cleveland. Amazing 19th and 20th century edifices like Severance Hall, the home of the Cleveland Orchestra, and at the same time, a reality that 1 out of every 3 people in Cleveland lives under the poverty line. And again, this is not only the story of Cleveland, it's the story of people all over, cities all over the world. Indeed, in Cleveland, like a lot of cities around the world, the reality is that in the United States, 90-plus cities are actually in contraction, what we say sometimes shrinking cities. And in that reality, we get a lot of challenges that in some ways produce different kinds of narratives. A narrative that can be a narrative of a city in decline, or if we choose to, a narrative in which we think about other kinds of ways of developing a narrative going forward. And it's always been my interest in our community to be asking, what can great research universities do to engage with the community around us, to leverage what we do best, to attend to both our research interests and the priorities of the community around us. And this is my story this morning. So it comes as no surprise that if you look at the history of universities that we're all engaged with in one shape, form, or another, that from the outside looking in, it very much looks like this. Most of our buildings are facing the backside, facing the community, not exactly inviting. And the truth is that at least by tradition for 250 years or more, many great research universities have been this way, essentially by philosophical design, exclusionary by choice, detached by choice. And yet in our age, with the set of challenges that we face, the value of being the ivory tower comes at a significant cost if we're not finding a way to meaningfully engage with the community around us. And of course, it's not easy, but I think we in the technology community have an important role, a contributing role, to figuring out how we can work with our community, the universities, to really overcome the historical tradition of our relationship to the community around us. And at Case Western Reserve University, certainly for the last 7 or 8 years, this has been an explicit strategic goal of the university, to really overcome these kinds of historical challenges. And so the university has, since 2002, 2003, and renewed over the last 2 or 3 years under the leadership of President Snyder, really began to figure a way that we could contribute to the revitalization and vitality of the city around us, to really support not only what we do best, but to connect it to economic renewal, to figuring out how we can take the technology and discoveries made on our campus and figure out both how to commercialize them by leveraging one of the best technology transfer operations that I've had the pleasure of being affiliated with over the many years. Also to figure out how meaningfully we could engage in overcoming the digital divide. And so the university technology community, 8 years ago, but indeed 7 years ago this past October, began a project to open up what now looks very familiar, but at the time seemed to be a fairly radical idea. The idea of actually creating a standards-based, open, neutral platform that we would connect to the community around us and connect all of the healthcare and museums and libraries and schools was the vision, a vision that we called at the time Creating One Cleveland. Very quickly, we outgrew that notion because it just wasn't the Case Western Reserve in the city of Cleveland that got on board, but actually the entire region around us. And it became known as One Community, now connecting some 20-plus counties around Cuyahoga, where we are in Cleveland. And the general idea was to really figure out how we, in the technology community, could partner with the full breadth of the public sector anchor institutions. We didn't even know they were called public sector anchor institutions at the time. We didn't even know they were called middle mile institutions at the time. But indeed, the idea was to partner with all of the schools. There's some 800 schools that are now connected to One Community. All the government agencies, there are now multiple city, county, regional, government agencies, indeed some federal agencies connected to the One Community fiber infrastructure. Many of the great museums around us, some 75 libraries are now connected to One Community. Many research facilities, both the Cleveland Clinic, university hospitals, and now the VA are all connected to this infrastructure, and really creating a very, very, we think at the time, provocative idea that we in the technology community could contribute in an exciting and vital way to the reimagining of Cleveland, a reimagining of Northeast Ohio, one that would actually see us as a forward, progressive, clean, technology-enabled future that we wanted to actually take a part in charting ourselves. And in creating One Community, it started with a bunch of folks like us in the room, largely propeller heads, proud nerds, and realized actually fairly soon that those were not necessarily the key skill sets that we needed. And indeed, One Community today is run by a serial entrepreneur, venture-backed experience, who's giving back to the community. His name's Scott Rourke. Some of you had a chance yesterday to hear his contribution to the Ohio Middle Mile that Ornet has led. A very important lesson, I would say, is we're all figuring out what happens after BTOP, or as BTOP rolls out. What's the governance model look like? What do the financial models look like? And we found out, although it started with a bunch of university folks developing One Community, that it turned out that we weren't the right kind of people to run the organization. It had to be much more entrepreneurial than most of us, truthfully, were good at. And moreover, the financial models, the business models, were not all about nonprofit activity, although the foundation had to be nonprofit. So something for all of us to be thinking about. This has been a sort of 7-year journey, and we've reinvented governance 3 times at One Community, a very important set of activities. So again, the overall idea was to create a big tent where we could all be engaged in collaboration activities to, again, connect our research priorities to the community's priorities as a whole, and literally develop a series of layered service networks that supported on a single build. That was the radical departure. Instead of government building out its own networks, instead of public safety building out their own networks, instead of public health building out the networks, building out a common network that could be segmented by service lines. Again, all of this with 2020 hindsight sounds obvious, but 6-7 years ago, of course, these were fairly radical ideas. And in addition to building out fiber, also committed to building up free public wireless everywhere that we went. And so this has kind of been the vision for the last several years of this journey. As I say, before BTOP, in 22 counties in Northeast Ohio, largely driven more recently by early funding from 3 years ago, now almost 3 years ago, from the FCC for rural health, taking some of the amazing health technology that we have in Cleveland and beginning to make health access available to the rural communities around us. Again, as we, in collaboration, in fact, with the leadership of ORNet, have divided the state of Ohio into 3 mega zones. This is one of the things that Assistant Secretary Strickland was referring to when whole states got together, due to, I think, in large measure, the leadership of ORNet and our Chancellor, Eric Fingerhut, a chance to bring it all together with a very significant investment. One Community has responsibilities for the Northeast of our state in this collaborative effort to extend the network footprint. In terms of what One Community has done, today before BTOP, about 1,500 on our way to 1,800 sites are being built out. These are all actually, now again, things that we didn't know. These are middle mile. These are, if I could just actually get a little bit of help staying on cue here. Thank you. These are actually the middle mile institutions that we're all familiar with now and building them out. We've managed to bring about $120 million of investment into the community around us and a huge cost avoidance activity by partnering and creating this cooperative model along the way. Again, as I sort of shared, a major commitment to working with the rural communities around us. Again, this is all sort of pre-BTOP activity. Now with the Ohio Middle Mile Consortia, a chance to really put this whole project on steroids in, I think, a very, very exciting kind of way to engage. And in addition to that, as I indicated, also a serious commitment to bring wireless connectivity everywhere that the public is being served at these public institutions along the way. Well, that's kind of the history in 10.5 minutes of the last 7 years. And now I just kind of want to shift gears for the next little bit to talk about the Case Connection Zone, a project that was dreamed up in the context of BTOP, that was not funded by BTOP, was funded in the end by ourselves, in collaboration with all of these community partners that you see in front of you, plus a terrific top tier of technology partners to really try to model what it would mean to really extend the fiber optic infrastructure that we'd enjoyed not only at the university but now across One Community to truly engage in last mile activities as a research program of Case Western Reserve University. And so again, the idea has been setting a goal of a research university project to connect 5,000 households in the inner city. Case Western Reserve sits in the heart of one of the poorest cities in America. What difference can we make to the lives of people around us by fully engaging with them in a 21st century fashion, connecting our research program to their environments around them, and starting with the question, so what are your needs? And it turns out that when you ask people in an appreciative inquiry kind of fashion, what are your needs? The needs are not that complicated in the end and align extremely well to much of the research program at the university. Number one is safety. Something that all of us as university people understand is critically important to our environment. 2, health and wellness. 3, trying to figure out how to be successful in the world of education. Again, degree completion being a huge issue. High school degree completion being a huge issue in the community around us. And finally, the dire need to be more aware of and how to actually leverage a shrinking monthly check when it comes to energy and energy management challenges. So when we engaged in these conversations with the communities around us, these were the 4 major areas that emerged in terms of where and why we would engage in a local fiber strategy. We actually have lit up the first, we believe, gigabit research platform in the country with 104 residents in this beta block, which I'll be talking about for the next little bit. It's fully symmetrical gigabit to each and every household. Each and every household, as I'll show you with a couple of little video clips, is supported with HD video conferencing, some smart health appliances, and some smart energy appliances. As these programs involve human subjects, they'll run through IRB activity. And of course, it's all based on opt-in kinds of services, and I can answer more questions about that. These are private homes, so in order to try to show the public kind of what it is that we've got cooked up, we've actually opened up a public alpha house around right upstairs in one of our favorite coffee shops in University Circle. It looks just like any of the homes, souped up exactly the same way, except that here visitors from all over the world have been traipsing in since May to take a look at the kinds of service lines and research activities that are underway. So the first thing that we thought of as a very important activity to begin is if this is going to be a research project and not just a technology enabling activity, build it and they will come. No, that wasn't the design. The design was to create a services-oriented engagement strategy of applied research effort, was to actually hire a chief research scientist. A chief scientist, Marv Schwartz, is pictured here, is our chief scientist, and has been engaged over the summer months, late summer months and into the fall now. And his job is to work with the technology community and actually all of the service providers engaged in safety, health and wellness, STEM education, and energy management to put together an ecosystem that attends both the priorities of the community and the research activities around us, and by physically connecting a series of beta blocks around the community around us. And the overall goal, connect, be smart, be clean, be healthy, and be green. I'm going to try to run you through a series of use cases to kind of give you a sense of the research program that is developing, focusing first on some energy activities that are going on. And now that we have, it turns out, even though there are 104 homes, 93 of them are now fully fiber optically connected with this gigabit service. It turns out that when you deal with real homes as opposed to green fields, in addition to asbestos, you also find out that some of the homes in the inner city of Cleveland actually don't have joists to actually put a whole lot of anything into, risers or otherwise, to run fiber. So we're down 9 right now along the way. But anyway, we're well on our way to connecting homes that are essentially smart in this environment, and trying in this environment to work with the faculty in engineering who are engaged in sensor technology, alternative energy issues, and essentially using network for demand distribution of energy across the grid, develop not a simulated environment of what that looks like, but actually creating that sandbox in the inner city, right in the university itself, to try to develop a living lab architecture for how to actually build out a smart grid for this environment, both on the demand side and on the supply side of the effort. So again, a kind of use case here on the demand side. I'm going to sort of share with you a couple of small little video clips coming up right now, but very much a kind of in-home orientation. Can we educate people to actually take some significant responsibility for the monitoring of their environment if the information came to you in a intuitive, well-developed human factors, UI kind of environment, in a way that just the technology just worked, not with a computer. Getting to the Internet of Things, in which essentially screens connected to devices, connected to the Internet, enabled a more transparent way that allowed people to query, allowed people to track. So a kind of demand-side orientation for that activity. Obviously, there's also a supply-side kind of orientation for working with the faculty, Ken Laparo in particular in engineering a case, on working with the supply-side teams at Cleveland Public Power and at First Energy and the like, trying to figure out how to dynamically reprovision energy consumption based on what's going on in a particular set of neighborhoods. And now we have, again, not a simulated environment, but a live lab that we can work with. So it turns out that when you kind of have these use cases that you imagine in a kind of whiteboarding session, one of the extraordinary things that has happened in Cleveland since May the 22nd, not a lot of time, is that two things have happened. One is, what was, and again, there are people here who know the Hessler Street area, a fascinating inner city, 2 blocks basically. Overnight, people started hearing about the gigabit block, and the complexion of the prospective tenants changed overnight. People wanted to move, came to the landlords, and wanted to actually move into these facilities because of the gigabit. That's one side of the story. The more interesting one, at least for right now, is that it has overnight, effectively, catalyzed entrepreneurial ideas. We don't know what a gigabit network will do in terms of energy activity, but we at the university certainly don't know. But what's happened is a series of entrepreneurs have begun to take advantage, and their minds are on fire. The couple of stories I'm going to share with you today, including the next one that's coming up here, are really from Case alumni who have been hanging around Northeast Ohio for a while. And for them, this is a chance to really showcase their innovation activity. So the first one is actually introducing Dave Martin, a Case alum, who started Intwine. He'll briefly describe it for you if the guys will just click on the screen.
For the first step in our business model and our process is to get device connected to the home. And we have a number of different devices in the home now. We have a thermostat that we have a whole house power monitor, so we can get the meter read into the home. Actually, we do that in a few different ways. And we're working on a direct load control device that will be able to connect to a hot water heater or any outlet in the home. A homeowner can go in to a web portal, or a third party could do this for them and say, I want to spend X amount of money this month on my energy. And there's a budgeting tool. And because we'll have the thermal footprints of their home, we'll have variables like weather, we'll have the utilities pricing information, and we'll have a historic use on how they've used energy in the past. What our model will do will take all those into place and then really almost have like a fuel gauge, a running active feedback real time on how they're using their energy. And if they're starting to go over their budget, we can give them feedback as to say why and what we recommend that they do within that billing cycle to help get back.
So, I mean, the key story there is they're working with Marv Schwartz, our chief scientist, and Dave and his team at Intwine. The goal is really to figure out how we can accelerate research activity in our labs, support what is already turning out to be a very interesting commercialization effort. Intwine's devices in the Alpha House. Our goal is to fully bring up 10 of the beta homes with this device. Installation activities, design activities are underway. And already just on the prospects of bringing in other prospects, actually from Long Island most recently, Dave and his colleagues have other test sites now underway with their concepts and with their product initiation activities. A second use case, health and wellness activities. The issues in Cleveland are not academic when it comes to health and wellness issues. We have a huge set of challenges, interrelated challenges around obesity, around type 2 diabetes, around general health management, certainly around the university circle area. It's very, very real. And the irony, of course, is that we have three of the most amazing research medical facilities in the world at the Cleveland Clinic, University Hospitals, and the VA right in front of us. And so the goal has really been to figure out how can we use real Clevelanders to model what it actually takes to engage in early intervention, education, and attempt to actually take a look at chronic disease management as well as wellness activities and look to disrupt the model. The model is broken for the way we manage chronic disease management. It's going to bankrupt us, never mind in terms of the actual medical model itself. And the idea really that we've been exploring and that we want to continue to explore is how is it that we can actually use the network to move from a clinical model to one that is a blended model of clinical intervention when it's helpful, based on sitting in the sitting room at the doctor's office, with home wellness engagement, home wellness intervention to change the economics, to change the relationship environment along the way. So again, a couple of different models that we are working with our faculty, especially in the Faculty of Environmental Health at the university, along with some, again, of the innovators in the Cleveland medical devices world, along with a huge industry that is growing up around this, trying in the first instance to really take personalized devices and letting people essentially be gauging in real time through wireless scales, through heart strap devices, pedometers, and the like, a way for them to not only use these devices, but through using interfaces like the Cleveland Clinic's project with Google, working on trying to provide you with a portal to your health that doesn't take anything more than actually getting a Wi-Fi connection to upload the data. And of course, if you're living in a smart house in Hessler, our beta block, you don't actually have to do anything because the house is always lit up with gigabit and 802.11n everywhere along the way. So that on the wellness side. Also chronic disease management. And I'll just show you a little video clip coming up right now in terms of how to actually think about chronic disease management in a way that is very real, very compelling, where kids can work with their parents and grandparents to help them better deal with, again, the ongoing day in, day out activity of making sure that you're not only treating being sick, but you're also getting practice at being well. Again, using technologies, as you'll see in this next little video clip, where we actually have a couple use cases of some very, we think, impactful modeling of the kind of work that goes on in the beta block. So again, the other piece here relates to environmental health, trying to actually use the technology to in real time be sensing the particulates in the air around us for measuring what is going on, whether it is with chronic disease management for housebound senior citizens, or whether it's the lead poisoning challenge that we happen to have in Cleveland from the legacy of our steel industry around us, a chance for scientists to engage in not laboratory simulated environments, but real-time data collection from the smart homes involved. So here's a quick little video clip of, two little video clips pasted together.
The main thing I think is not eating right. I'm not eating right.
Has anybody ever talked to you about when it is low, for example, below 70, that what you're supposed to do to kind of correct that problem so that you're safe?
I had to call into the hospital and get a statement, let the nurse tell me what to do at that time when it happened. She told me about the orange juice and the sugar.
Okay. Are you familiar with the 15-15 rule?
No, ma'am.
Well, I give you a lot of credit because living with diabetes is not easy for anybody, and especially going through what you went through. Can you fill me in on what's happened since the last time medically? Have there been any major changes in your health during that time?
Well, I got to be honest with you. I had the worst A1C reading I've ever had in the last 15 years of dealing with diabetes. And
what was that?
A1C was at 10.
10.
Yeah.
So a different kind of a model. Both of these largely with respect to chronic disease management, but really I think a kind of, again, compelling environment where not only is there intimacy that is going on. Let's just see if I can bring us back here. But I just want to point out, nope, let me take care of it. Thank you. One more. Super. Just want to point out that the woman on her front porch, very comfortable, no computers in front of her. Her grandson is actually helping drive the technology, is wearing a wireless cuff that was giving Dr. Sadler a real-time reading of her health vitals. And again, a kind of very simple porch-side conversation along the way. A third use case, of course, has to do with the learning environment. It's obviously why Case Western Reserve University is interested in this. Whilst completion rates in high schools are less than 40%, in Cleveland, the number when it comes to STEM subjects is dramatically lower still. Fewer than 1 out of 3 kids actually finishes their science, math activities. This is a crisis, not only in absolute terms, in terms of what it means to be committed and passionate about education, but also in terms of the economy. And I don't mean just generically the economy. Cleveland is a health economy. And that's what we run on today. Those major employers, the Cleveland Clinic employs 35,000 people in the city of the greater city of Cleveland. University Hospitals, about 23,000 people, and so forth. VA. If we're not supporting health care job creation through the pipeline, it's going to further erode the quality of life and the prospects of a future for the city around us. And so this is an all-hands activity. The engagement is not only our great faculty at Case Western Reserve University, but also some of the great magnet schools that are engaged in STEM education, the libraries, the Great Lakes Science Center is engaged in this, a series of institutes, Natural History Museum, are all engaged in this kind of activity to again figure out how do we leverage the network to engage in two kinds of learning engagement strategies focused in on both capturing the baseline of how students are engaging with STEM and then supporting peer-to-peer as well as peer-to-mentor relationships to try to raise the success rate, which we can measure over time in terms of high school experience. So again, a kind of education use model. Our environment at Case Western Reserve University has significantly been focused in on video content for a very good long time in terms of these activities. And just to kind of briefly share with you a couple of use cases. One is really a model of engaging with students at the university, just trying to figure out how to really think about peer engagement with a mentor, a model now that we hope to export to the high school at John Hay, which is right across the street from the university. And the second short little education example has to do with students dreaming, trying to imagine themselves as students in college and interacting with a professor while they're in high school, trying to learn as well as get their imaginations turned up in terms of seeing themselves as college-bound.
We are now joining you with students from John Hay High School and Cleveland School of the Arts and other community members to hear what you're doing in surgery.
Thanks. Welcome to Room 6, Operating Room 6. This room is equipped for minimally invasive neurosurgery. We're able to go into the brain with the endoscopes you'll see through a hole about the size of a dime. and wanted to welcome you here. We're all really here in the operating room to help a lady who came to us, a 60-year-old woman, who came to us with hydrocephalus, a collection of fluid in the brain, in these ventricles centrally in the brain.
If you've ever done a flame test in high school, this equipment right here is essentially a big flame. We can ignite it or put a sample in here, run a burner in here and run the flame so we get the different colors of the compounds. And over here we've got detection apparatus. This device right here, if you can shoot down on top, Ed, is an auto sample.
So another kind of example we want to kind of show you of faculty engagement with students is a piece that we've been working on with our own chemistry students. If you'll light that one up in the back.
Good morning, everybody.
Morning,
Mike.
Hi, Professor Kenny.
Anybody have any questions? Susie.
In lab today, we were using 2 indicators. Why do we need to do that?
Good question. Let me see. So, in lab today, we're going to be doing another titration, except we're going to do it backwards. We're going to start with a basic solution. From there, we're going to go to an acidic solution. And we're using 2 different indicators because we want to find out what's happening right here and right here. So we're going to use 2 different colors of dyes to tell us when we're at this point and when we're at this point.
Is this going to be on the test?
Is this going to be on the test? Of course it's going to be on the test.
So the project for us, the research program from a technology perspective, is totally intriguing. It raises so many interesting questions around the world that we live in. Trying to imagine how to actually design and build the Internet of Things. Trying to think of new kinds of sensors, working with the faculty, especially in the engineering world. All of the middleware associated with ubiquitous connectivity and trying to figure out how to actually be passing credentials off to all of these different kinds of applications that doesn't require computers to the extent possible, on the assumption that we've been talking about computers fading away for 5 or 6 years among our community. It's time to begin to roll out those kinds of services, and obviously realizing that it's about creating and supporting other kinds of devices in that effort. I just want to say, just before I roll this piece here, that again, to come back to how entrepreneurialism lights up, at our May 21st launch of the beta block, this guy, a CASE alumnus from our management school, came to me and said, the light bulb, literally, he was in the audience, the light bulb literally just went off. He's an Israeli flight simulator who came to Akron to work with Lockheed Martin to build the F-16 simulator. He finished that assignment over 5 years, got his executive MBA at CASE along the way, and was basically saying, what am I going to do with my MBA? I want to start a company, except I do fighter technology simulation. And then it hit him. And Moti Avisar and his colleague, Jerry Alon, have been working now since May on developing a surgical theater, which, just like when pilots today, when they're actually practicing, can actually practice in real time what tomorrow's flight is going to look like in terms of all of the details, the terrain, the experience, the haptic, everything, trying to actually provide for neurosurgeons, people actually doing open brain surgery, a real patient, not a model patient, but a real patient-specific data set on what their patient is going to experience tomorrow when they do surgery. And then the idea hit them, what happens if we can actually use the network to actually support that activity? So let's just roll that one from Moti.
Surgical theater allows the surgeon the opportunity to make critical choices before he enters the surgery room. So for example, if he needs to choose aneurysm clip and he has set like bucket of hundreds of aneurysm clip, he can do it in advance instead of doing it after opening the skull.
A application that has the controls from the surgeon, that holds his day-to-day tools that he uses in surgery. The application needs to analyze the location, position, orientation of those controls and pass this data to the simulation executive. The gigabit network will allow me to pass this data between those components regardless of their location.
And we're taking it to the next steps of implementing pieces in the cloud, connected via fiber optic, and allowing surgeons to interact remotely with the same model of patient-specific. This is what we call.
The story, I think the exciting part of the story here is that Warren Solomon, for those of you who happen to know this space of neurology, is perhaps one of America's best-known surgeons, has headed up the National Professional Associations. And from May until today, Moti, with Warren's help, and Andy Sloan, another doc at Case Western Reserve, have actually set up a new company, Surgical Theater. They've got angel funding in place. They've presented to any number now of both medical societies as well as medical venture-backed firms. And they're off to the races, actually using technology in stimulating new kinds of opportunities, both for them and for our faculty, both for them and the doctors around us, in creating new opportunities and bringing an Israeli company to Cleveland, which we think is a pretty good idea. So in addition to all of this high-tech research stuff, we realize that the community living in Hessler is not just interested in being part of a research program. Long ago, we realized that it really has to be real. All of our effort is opt-in. We're not turning people into sort of human subjects day in and day out. There are no restrictions on what they can do with their gigabit connection. We're not into triple play at the university. We have a research program that they can opt into. But there's also a quality of life piece that we think is quite real. About 40% of the people who live in Hessler are actually students at Case. Just kind of roll this piece, a little piece to show you a kind of very basic, everyday kind of activity enabled by the network.
Morning, Chris.
Morning, Dad. How are you?
Tired. How are you?
Tired too. It was a late night of studying.
Yeah. What's new?
Not a whole lot. I have a psychology test later and then some stuff for my sorority.
That's good. Is everything going okay?
Good, just a lot of work. I need you to send me the money for my sorority dues. I need to be in by Friday.
Okay, more money, huh? Alrighty, I'll wire it into your account later today.
Alright, well I need to go take my test now, so I will talk to you later.
Alright, well have a good day, honey.
Alright, you
Love
too.
You too, bye.
Every house has a software-based HD video conferencing. In fact, we offer 3 different kinds of software solutions, all of which provide remarkably high-fidelity experiences. And Mike Thomas's experience with his daughter here is really a fairly typical kind of reality in which we want to create an ecosystem, not just of research activity, but of meaningful everyday use that provides us with insights as researchers into the ways in which folks will find their way to engaging in the technology. And if what we're interested in is building demand for huge network connectivity, that's our challenge in many ways, is to figure out how to leverage what we do in the research community and marry it, not make an or statement, but marry it to the daily use in compelling ways that will find its way into the everyday normal lives of people around us. So to kind of just provide you with sort of 2 summary pieces, and I hope I've left about 15 minutes for Q&A along the way. So we've been live since May 22. We have 2 more beta blocks under design right now, again, all in the inner city activities. Commitment through our chief scientists and engaging in research services. The goal is not to engage in triple play services. We don't really care what the residents do in terms of traditional data, voice, video services. Indeed, it's an open, neutral network. There are service providers who want to provide VoIP services and entertainment services, the subscription services. We're fine with that if people want to consume them. Our piece is focused in on public service delivery, trying to reinvent models and stimulate research activities and innovation around us, and to try to build demand for adoption of ultra-broadband through this engagement of both working with the university's research program and the community's priorities. I want to leave you with a challenge that is actually where I believe Aneesh Chopra got interested in Cleveland. In addition to bringing him out and him walking the beta block and testing out the Alpha House and getting excited meeting some of the entrepreneurs, his idea was, and the one that we've latched on to, is can we together, the Internet 2 community and others across the nation, work together to create a testbed facility using gigabit connectivity at the beta block, at the last mile, to actually create a research program across the community. A program that we propose back to him in terms of leveraging this enormous, once in not only a generation, but in any generation in our lifetimes, leveraging the investment that the Department of Commerce through Larry Strickling made possible to us to build out this amazing set of new networks. And when we get a UCAN network NAP, I'll be able to include that rather than the makeup one that I included here. And what's the vision? The vision is actually to take 40 of the endpoints of the many thousand that Assistant Secretary Strickling indicated are going to get lit up in perhaps as many as 40 cities, create perhaps as many as 40 fiber to the home beta blocks with perhaps as many as 5,000 residents, and build together a extraordinary, never before seen, never before built research program which focuses in on the intersecting point between the research activities of great universities and research institutes, as well as the needs of the public sector, spawning not only solutions, but also catalyzing innovation, catalyzing entrepreneurship along the way in this kind of activity. And that is in many ways, I think, a goal well worth pursuing. I know that in the next year and a half, most of us will be heads down trying to build it, but if we lose sight of why we're building it, I think we run the risk of a whole set of additional challenges that I would prefer to try to find a way to get ahead of. If you're interested in this during the Q&A or during perhaps after the talk on the way out, I'd be happy to engage with you, take a card, and be sure that if you're interested that your university or network community is part of this proposal going forward. And again, proposal is an overstatement, this idea on its way to being a proposal. So here it is in a nutshell, a kind of 3-minute summary of the presentation.
Case Western Reserve University, founded in 1826, is the university in Cleveland, Ohio's University Circle, a unique collection of over 40 cultural, health, and education institutions. Case Western Reserve University has a tradition of science and technology innovation that includes its share of Nobel laureates and internet innovations like the ARPANET, Cleveland FreeNet, and more recently, the vision of leveraging advanced information technology through One Community to address community priorities. One Community was started in 2004 by Case Western Reserve University and the City of Cleveland with support from Nortec. One Community now connects more than 150 organizations and more than 1,800 facilities in Northeast Ohio with unprecedented gigabit speeds. In 2009, Case Western Reserve University began a new research program focused on connecting neighborhoods with gigabit connectivity. The goal was to assess the impact these ultra-broadband speeds would have on people's lives. The first community to become part of the research program is Hessler Street, a historic heritage neighborhood with 104 homes and located in the heart of the university.
Because there's real data streams coming in, they can help solve real-life problems.
In order to test, validate, and experiment, the university has also opened up a public Alpha House, which is a demonstration home that the public can visit and explore.
What I thought we would do is maybe just go over to the Alpha House.
Good morning to everyone over at Botanical Gardens, as well as everyone who's viewing over the internet.
This spring, the university hosted a demonstration day called the Gigabit Breakfast Club to share some initial experimentation. The innovation efforts at Case Western Reserve University, known as the Case Connection Zone, have garnered national attention.
To really celebrate what you all have done. You all are on page 121 of the National Broadband Plan as we comb through all the different things going on in the country, we recognize that this is a very special initiative.
Unlike other broadband initiatives, the Case Connection Zone focuses on supporting the development of compelling services in health, education, safety, and energy management that will drive adoption and demand. The Case Connection Zone is focused on next-generation services that help imagine and influence the future.
Have you checked your cholesterol recently?
Yes, and I'm now taking 10 milligram.
New ways of home health and wellness education.
We drill the hole through the bone, and then we have a probe that gently enters into the ventricular system.
New ways of thinking about education in science technology and engineering and math.
Right now we've got 3 different lab stations set up in this laboratory.
How well does high school chemistry prepare students for college chemistry?
When I left high school, I thought I knew a lot about chemistry and came to college and learned that was very wrong.
New interactive engagement with peers and professors.
You're going to have applications in your neighborhood where your neighborhood is going to be safer. You're going to have cameras strategically planted.
New ways of thinking about neighborhood security.
All this wireless stuff needs power.
New ways of educating people about energy management. Case Western Reserve University's research program is at once advancing the research lab of a great university well beyond its physical walls, and at the same time engaging in meaningful community partnerships that address priorities defined by the communities around us here in Cleveland, Ohio.
Thank you. Dave, are you all right if we have any questions?
Absolutely. We've got
Comments,
plenty of time for questions.
David Farmer, University of Minnesota. You mentioned that you don't do the triple play and the other kinds of things that typically the home user wants. But you mentioned that you're open to other people doing it. Do you have other providers providing the VoIP and video services so it's they can get the services they want?
Right. Today we provide data services, symmetrical gigabit services for data. There are pilot activities that we are enabling. In other words, the university's relationship to Time Warner provides for an opportunity to take video that comes to our head end for entertainment to our residence halls and redirect it on a subscriber basis, not because we're into this. And likewise with VoIP services, a whole range of services. One community has actually helped, for example, the county, all of Cuyahoga County uses one community's partnership model for delivering voice services. The university, for example, all of its LD, all of its long distance is driven through one community. So again, we're not providing services, voice services, but there's opportunities for individuals who live in those homes to be, and apartment blocks to be.
And those opportunities are more than theoretical, is all I'm asking.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Please.
Bravo. It's very impressive. One of the things, the opportunities that I think we may miss is that there is a residential community at universities that typically have either gigabit speeds or near gigabit speeds, generally very high quality connectivity, and it would be interesting to see the activities beyond the connectivity that you have taking place in these model environments being extended into residential facilities around the country. Just a comment.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think the problem we have is the story we tell, because I think for most of us, we've been doing residential network connectivity for some time. We missed the chance because it never occurred to all, it certainly didn't occur to me 12 years ago, 15 years ago, when we lit up the network at Case, the first experiment in connecting fiber, I think it was in the country, truthfully, was to the residence halls. We struggled for years just to get it to all work. And that was our preoccupation, rather than asking, so what could we imagine in terms of an active research program that could join with, the outside neighbors along the way. I think you're exactly right. I think a lot of universities are innovating in this space by turning up their residential halls into open labs. Systems in those residential halls are now being exposed as part of the presidential commitment for climate control, so that students who are living in them are able to measure what's going on in terms of CO2 in the residence halls and things of that sort. Those are all things that only occur to us now, and I hope that they are actively engaged with the kind of work that we're piloting. And I think there's a chance for us to wrap the idea of a test bed, national test bed of residential experiences by joining both some of our campus efforts and some of the community around us, which I think is your point.
I love
Hey, Michael.
First of all, congratulations. I mean, that is absolutely phenomenal.
Thank you.
Naturally, I'm interested a little bit in healthcare activities. Okay?
Sure.
I think you have a tremendous opportunity to make changes that none of the rest of the country has been able to make. But it's only going to happen, okay, if the providers really buy into it.
Right.
Okay, they don't seem to be part of the program yet, okay, perhaps. And I'm also interested in places like the clinic, okay, and how are they participating? Can you just help me understand?
Sure, absolutely. So both the Cleveland Clinic and University Hospitals and the VA and Metro Health, our 4 largest providers, have been at the table under the tent since day one in the creation of One Community, as well as in the Fiber to the Home initiative. And you may recall in my summary slide, I indicated there are 2 additional beta blocks under design. One is in Fairfax, which is in the backyard of the Cleveland Clinic, literally their Hessler, their village. And Metro Health is working with us in Buckeye Shaker. These are communities that are among the most impoverished, very difficult health indicators, education outcomes, and the like. And we are working directly with them. Martin Harris, who's the CIO of the Cleveland Clinic, and I have been working together. We've also been working with OSTP, the Office of Scientific Technology at the White House, to really leverage work that he's doing. He's working right now with Microsoft and Google. All of the work that he's doing is based on synchronizing health to the Health Vault, to the EMR. This is a chance, and what excites Martin so much is that this stands to be a project that focuses in on real-time data gathering, and so Martin has been a huge supporter of the effort. At UH, Mary Alice Anachirico, who's the CIO of that facility, is interested literally in the research activities associated with type 2 diabetes and obesity. It's an active research program for which they have long-term national funding. Again, they're looking to take a look at it in terms of not only chronic disease management, but wellness intervention. So those are real programs that, along with Metro Health's project at Buckeye Shaker, which is run by Randy Siebold. Dr. Siebold is with Metro Health, is the nation's largest continuous study of type 2 diabetes, an intervention strategy based in the community on shifting the model from exclusively clinical intervention, a project that he and his colleagues have been working on with neighborhood healthcare satellite facilities, now taking it one step further where the home is literally an extension of the healthcare clinic through the appropriate real-time intervention of 5 sensors that they're trying to collect real-time data on, starting with wireless scales, glucometer reading, pedometer readings, and gathering those data in real time. Neither of those projects are launched because it actually turns out, as we all know, this is not easy stuff to build. I have a whole other presentation on what it actually took to build Hessler over the last 8 or 9 months. The team back in Cleveland, including Corning, including IBM, including Cisco, who actually helped our team and One Community build it out. We all learned a lot, which is diplomatic speak for it. None of it worked the way it was supposed to out of the starting gates. And as all of us engage in building out these extraordinarily exciting but demanding national network activities, we're all aware of how important getting the technology right is, and we've got some lessons to share there as well over time. Thanks, Michael, for the question.
Great presentation.
Thank you.
4 verbs: alert, engage, select, and stage. How in the Case Connection Zone are you working with researchers to alert them, engage them, select them, and then stage them?
Right, it's terrific. And the only insight, and I shared it with Dave this morning at breakfast, and I think if Marv Schwartz were here, I know at least he said he was going to be watching a bit of the presentation today. We have a whole presentation that Marv and I work on together to get in front of the faculty community. Marv is not exactly retired. He likes to remind me of that, but I'm using huge amounts of his time and basically paying for for the out-of-pocket expenses, by and large, as our chief scientist. to really engage the faculty community. He's been around the university for 37 years, and before that, part as a student at the university. He's got his PhD in '73 from the computer science program at the day. The opportunity there is he's created software for electronic medical records, database activity. He's the perfect kind of engagement partner to catalyze your four legs of the stool. And we're not trying to turn this into a production research program. His goal for the next 9 months is to literally pilot these 4 use cases so that we can actually put into play what we know is required, a fifth leg of the stool, which is a sustainability strategy related to actually writing research grants. In addition to Michael's question about the providers not being in this yet, the reality is that we've not yet fully understood how to carve out a never-before-seen platform for engaging in NIH or NSF funding, or for that matter, DOE and DOD. I mean, there's a whole bunch of things. And so we want to actually have demonstrable, IRB-approved, if it's a human subject, data to take to the funding model. And then, a year later, be in a position to really be able to answer your question, because we'll actually have data to show sort of the full pipeline of the materials you outlined.
Good morning. Ellen Vaughn with
Hi.
Internet 2, and the program is really, really exciting. Can you say a little bit more about any efforts that have been underway to ensure that you have the right kind of composition of the neighborhood in order to move forward,
right,
being sure it's a good testbed environment?
Right. So the choice of Hessler, for those of you who might have visited, and I have a couple of Clevelanders in the crowd and people who've been to the university before, the truth be told, Hessler is not a typical Cleveland neighborhood. It's as close as we could get early on. Again, to be clear, when Dave was so kind as to ask me to perhaps share some of our experience, I did share with him, hey, Dave, we applied for BTOP, and for whatever set of circumstances, we weren't successful. The fabulous folks in Champaign-Urbana, they've actually figured out the secret sauce here, and they absolutely have a great story to share. I'll tell you our story as long as you realize that it wasn't BTOP funded. Why do I say that? Because in the BTOP funded, we said, here's the profile of the real Cleveland community. And it's just real. It's just raw and real. Hessler is a mixed community. About 40% of the people who live in Hessler are affiliated with the university. So when the comment that was made about residential experience, the residents' life, students already knowing about the network, well, we overcame some of that. Thanks to fabulous work at One Community and fabulous work by some long-standing community activists, One Community received $12 million for capacity building, and actually working not only in Cleveland but in Northeast Ohio and beyond to actually develop a national training program for engaging those who aren't familiar with the technology, including 2 community centers right in the university circle community around us. And those lesson plans, by the way, are all up in a kind of open source model for all the communities involved in capacity building along the way. On a go-forward basis, the reason we're turning to Fairfax and the reason we're turning to Buckeye Shaker is because, and Ashbury, other communities around us, is because those are the real Cleveland. But we were very pragmatic. This was started by technology companies, researchers, and we could not find a way to balance the compelling program and vision that we had at a moment in time when we thought there was a national audience, well before Google had an idea of what it might look like to light up a community. We were actually already had trucks out that were actually stringing fiber. We knew it was a short window of time, and we needed to find a way to work with a regular neighborhood, not one that was as raw as Cleveland, for any number of challenges. Just one little data point. Even in Hessler, there were only three owners of those 94 residences that actually live in Hessler. So like a lot of Cleveland, it's absentee landlord. That was real in terms of how do you get permissions and how do you engage with them and how do you deal with residents who are very mobile and move oftentimes the day before rent is due. I mean, those are all realities that we have to figure out how to really contend with. So it was a balancing act to start with.
Hi, Deke Kasabian from the University of Pennsylvania, and like the others, I want to say that's very inspiring.
Oh, great.
So if you think there's value in the idea of scaling that idea, if you want to see that scale to other places, what are the challenges? What are the gating factors? And is one of them plumbing? Is it the case that you think that, and I don't mean it in the sense where you had sensors on household appliances, but on the basics of networking, and do the national carriers have the ability to scale to meet the advanced needs of gigabit homes around the country when today they're kind of struggling in some senses to provide bandwidth for much, much lower bandwidth.
Right.
But just extend beyond that, please. If that's not the big challenge, if that's not the gating factor, tell me what is.
It's the gating factor if we think about it being delivered by the incumbents. It's not a gating factor if we're talking about us. We were talking to Dave today. Some folks are interested in figuring out how to get Chattanooga connected to as one of these scaling opportunities. Well, they're classically in a gating challenge because they may have gigabit rolling around the neighborhood at some point, but they got chicken wire out of the neighborhood to the rest of the world. But what we are doing here as a community is building out the world's first, super advanced network infrastructure, not just as a huge interstate system, but this is our challenge. This is our Tylenol 3, and this is going to be, extraordinarily exciting as it begins to get lit up. But we're talking about getting to the highways and the byways and to these middle mile public sector anchor institutions. And those institutions, libraries, museums, K-12 schools, they live in these neighborhoods. And so the gating factor is to figure out how can we, broadly public sector, but specifically the research university community, extend one of our core competencies, which is how to build, manage, and support network activity in a way that takes literally just that last mile. Now, it may not be off the campus backbone. In the case Cleveland Clinic, it may be off the backbone of the Cleveland Clinic. It might be off of the Cuyahoga Public Libraries. It might be off of a Metro Health satellite facility. It might actually be off of a public Cuyahoga County building. But we've architected, and what we're beginning to architect nationwide is, an infrastructure that provides, if provisioned, effectively, huge amounts of bandwidth for both demonstration projects and as demand grows for these kinds of examples, opportunities to, I think, drive up compelling reasons as to why the kind of modeling that we've all imagined, 100 gig backbones, again, then with off-ramps at the 10 gig, makes it possible for us to begin to think at the distribution layer and at the last mile of symmetrical gig kinds of services. The great news is we've lit this up as we've had the Dutch and the Swedes and the Koreans all kind of go, right, can we start sharing our experiences with you in the United States? And we sort of said, well, sure, but we're Cleveland, not the United States. What we want to do is join those international conversations because we'll learn from each other about how those countries are figuring it out, and then again use all of the genius of the Internet 2 community and our other national broadband activities to figure out how to get this down to our campuses or to that public sector anchor institution, no matter where it is, as a bridge into the community. Not exactly the answer you're looking for. It's more of a first step, but it is not a gating factor if we put our heads together.
Hi, Aneesh Chopra from Canary. Just curious, I think you talked about it a bit, but if you can elaborate how this was funded, some of the governance challenges, and basically what business models you're going to have going forward. Great.
Yeah, that's a whole another presentation, but I'd be happy to share with you a little bit of insight on each of these. So this was funded through Goodwill, Labor of Love, a lot of credits. So we played with brand new Corning fiber that had yet to get rolled out anywhere. Because of relationships, the university, as I shared, was the very first university to use Corning. Apparently, we'd never cashed in that chit. I cashed in on that chit to actually make it possible for them to contribute about $50,000 of in-kind, and that was their cost of this effort. We used IBM with some relationships to help us with the engineering, Cisco with respect to the actual question of, so how do we route the traffic into the one community drains that are out there without impacting the university's network, even though it's traveling over the university's network? Because, again, as we well know, lots of people on the campus not very interested in the community when it comes to if it negatively impacts their perceptions or otherwise of their world. All of those had to get sorted out. And basically, the university's total investment out of pocket in this was about $250,000 out of pocket. Most of that was in staff time. Most of that was in PMO activity and engineering support. The other quick piece about with respect to governance and business models, again, I think the big challenge for all of us is to figure out, we all know the difference between design, build, run. We are almost all of us very good at designing and many of us at building. And the real question is, as you think about run, we may need very different governance models. One community began as a bunch of technologists. Today there are only 2 university technologists engaged in the governance. The largest IT employer in the city, and everyone else is a CEO. Because this is a leadership question at this point, not when we started, but at this point. And we're reinventing the governance model again. And the business model in the short term, the business model is really trying to figure out, we're not all that transparent with what it actually costs us to typically run the networks that we do engage in. And now there's going to be a huge demand for transparency in this country, perhaps in Canada. I'm not quite sure how that'll all work in terms of your efforts. But as we now engage with the public sector institutions that want to join and get on board, get their bits traveling through our network, we're going to have to get into very, very interesting business relationship models. And as I shared with Dave this morning, we thought this could all be run as a business largely on EDS, K-20 education. We were wrong. It's all being run by meds. And that changes the business model significantly from our highly subsidized model that we expect in education to a competitive model for meds, which puts them under the alternative lease line circuit infrastructure that they've traditionally gotten used to, but is a higher profit margin to allow us to continue to extend the subsidy model for education. That's a very short answer, even though it was long, to a much more complicated issue. I think we're at the last question.
One more
Dave.
Quick question.
Thanks.
Okay, 2 components on the telemedicine model. One, in the images you had different types of units at different locations. Does that represent the evolution of your project, or is that different applications? Second part of that deals with the sustainability. What are you doing on the medicine to the home side to build a model that can be funded after the project's done?
Yeah, great questions. The first one is that we've remained totally ecumenical, totally no single solution per se with respect to endpoints. We've been piloting multiple. We've been doing baking off in terms of quality of service. We've been working with hardware solutions, software solutions, trying to find an optimal piece. You saw Sony gear in there. You saw Cisco gear in there, life-size gear in there. The idea is, to the extent possible, realizing that over time this technology will mature and there will be more of an opportunity to actually interchange, and then it'll leapfrog again and there'll be proprietary solutions, and that's sort of all predictable activity. In terms of the sustainability model, what we tried to do is we worked with both life size, and now we're working with video and a friend of the Internet 2 community to actually figure out a way to provide soft HD video conferencing capabilities for everybody as a baseline activity. And we've actually piloted, Mike and his daughter were piloting that activity with software tools from RadVision, another player in this space. So we don't yet have a sustainability model for the telemedicine activity. We are waiting for the providers to jump in. In large measure respecting the fact that they may have requirements to standardize, things that as a research community we're prepared to play with a little bit more. Perhaps I'll get a chance, if Dave is kind enough, perhaps in another year or 18 months to come back and share yet another update, and perhaps I can answer that question and others. Thanks for your time today.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Les.
Thanks so much, Dave.
Thank you. Great job.